My name is David, and I've been married to my wife, Sarah, for 8 years. When I think back to the early days of our relationship, I remember laughter, long conversations that stretched into the night, and a sense of partnership that felt unbreakable. We were young, ambitious, and full of hope. We shared dreams of building a life together, of starting a family and growing old side by side. Our friends often commented on how well we complemented each other, how our love seemed to radiate warmth to those around us. But life has a way of throwing curveballs, and after a few years, we found ourselves in a rut. The spark that once defined our relationship began to dim under the weight of stress from work and the monotony of everyday life. We argued more often, and the intimacy that once flowed so freely became a distant memory. It was during one of these rough patches that we decided to seek help. Therapy seemed like a proactive step, a way to reconnect and understand each other better. We found a couples therapist named Dr. Lang, who came highly recommended. Dr. Lang had a calm demeanor, a soothing voice, and an impressive resume. The first few sessions felt promising. We shared our grievances, our fears, and began to peel back the layers of our relationship. I believed we were on the right path, that with time we could rekindle what we once had. I remember sitting in that cozy office, feeling hopeful. I thought we could emerge stronger, more united. Little did I know that the very place I sought refuge would become the stage for betrayal. As I sit here now, recounting this, I feel a mix of emotions, sadness, anger, and disbelief. How could we have ended up here? I remember the warmth of our home, the shared meals, the laughter echoing through the halls. But those memories feel tainted now, overshadowed by what I've discovered. I never thought I would be the husband who would find himself in this position, questioning everything I thought I knew about love and trust. Our sessions with Dr. Lang continued, and initially it felt like we were making progress. But as time went on, I began to notice subtle changes in Sarah. She seemed distracted, distant, and sometimes lost in thought. I brushed it off as the stress of our relationship or the weight of the therapy sessions. I wanted to believe that we were in this together, that we were fighting for our marriage. But now I realize I was blind to the signs. The truth is, I was so focused on saving our relationship that I neglected to see the cracks forming beneath the surface. I remember the day we had a breakthrough in therapy, or so I thought. Sarah had opened up about her feelings, and I felt a sense of relief wash over me. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The way Dr. Lang looked at her, the way he encouraged her to express herself, it felt different. I dismissed it as paranoia, a result of my own insecurities. I realized now that I was living in a bubble of denial, one that would soon burst with devastating consequences. I had recorded every session, thinking it would help us reflect on our progress. I never imagined those recordings would become a painful reminder of betrayal. I thought I was documenting our journey to healing, but instead, I was unknowingly capturing the unraveling of my marriage. As I reflect on our journey, I can't help but feel a deep sense of loss. The trust I had in Sarah, in our therapist, and in the sanctity of our marriage has been shattered. I never thought I would be in this position, and yet here I am, grappling with the reality of my wife's infidelity. The journey to uncover the truth has just begun, and I can't shake the feeling that it will change everything. The moment I first suspected something was wrong is etched in my mind with a clarity that feels almost cruel. It was a Thursday evening, and we had just returned from yet another therapy session with Dr. Lang. I remember the air was thick with tension, a palpable silence hanging between us as we sat on opposite ends of the couch. Sarah was scrolling through her phone, her brow furrowed in concentration, while I stared into the distance, trying to process the session we had just endured. We had touched on some sensitive topics that night: communication breakdowns, unmet expectations, and the growing distance between us. I had felt a flicker of hope during the session, believing we were finally addressing the issues that plagued us. But as I glanced at Sarah, I felt a gnawing sense of unease. She was physically present, but mentally it was as if she had already checked out. That night as I lay in bed, I replayed the session in my mind. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The way Dr. Lang had looked at Sarah, the way he leaned in when she spoke, it all felt too intimate. I tried to dismiss my thoughts as paranoia, but they lingered, gnawing at my insides like a persistent itch I couldn't scratch. Over the next few days, I noticed more signs that something was amiss. Sarah became increasingly secretive. She started taking her phone with her into the bathroom, a habit she had never had before. I found her texting late at night, her face illuminated by the screen in the dark. When I asked her who she was messaging, she would brush me off, saying it was just a friend. But the tone in her voice felt evasive, almost defensive. My heart raced as I tried to piece together the puzzle. I felt like I was losing her, but I didn't know why. I wanted to confront her, to demand answers, but I also feared what the truth might reveal. In my mind, I reasoned that maybe I was overreacting. After all, we were in therapy. We were supposed to be working through our issues together. But deep down, a voice whispered that I was being naive. I began to replay the therapy sessions in my mind, searching for clues that might explain her behavior. It was during one of these reflections that it hit me like a punch to the gut. What if she was having an affair? The thought sent a wave of nausea through me, and I struggled to breathe as I fought against the rising tide of panic. I decided to do something I had never considered before. I went to my computer and pulled up the recordings of our therapy sessions. I had saved them all, thinking they would serve as a helpful tool for our healing process. I felt a mix of dread and determination as I hit play on the first session. Listening to our conversations felt surreal. I could hear the tension in my voice, the vulnerability in Sarah's words. But as I continued to listen, I found myself honing in on the moments when Dr. Lang spoke. To her, his tone, his lingering gazes, everything began to take on a new meaning. I felt a pit forming in my stomach as the realization dawned on me. He was not just a therapist. He was a predator preying on the cracks in our marriage. With each session I listened to, the evidence mounted. I heard Sarah's laughter, her moments of vulnerability, and Dr. Lang's encouragement that seemed to cross professional boundaries. I felt sick to my stomach. I was listening to my wife divulge her deepest fears and desires to a man who was supposed to help us, only to have him exploit that trust for his own gain. That evening, after listening to the recordings, I confronted Sarah. My heart raced as I stood in our living room, the weight of the truth pressing down on me like a lead blanket. I could barely find the words, but I knew I had to speak. "I know something going on, Sarah. I can feel it. Are you seeing someone else?" Her reaction was immediate. The shock in her eyes was palpable, but it quickly morphed into a defensive posture. "What are you talking about, David? How could you think that?" I wanted to scream, to shake her and demand the truth. But I stood there, feeling hollow, as she continued to deny everything. The anger bubbled up inside me, but I was also terrified of what her response meant. I needed proof, something concrete to validate the suspicions that had taken root in my mind. The confrontation left me feeling more isolated than ever. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing her, that the threads of our marriage were unraveling before my eyes. I had trusted her, believed in us, and now I was left questioning everything. I was desperate for answers, and I knew I had to dig deeper. The recordings were my lifeline, and I would sift through them until I found the truth. But the realization that my wife might be betraying me, that our therapist might be complicit in this betrayal, felt like a darkness creeping into every corner of my life. The fear of what was to come loomed over me like a storm cloud, and I braced myself for the tumultuous journey ahead. The confrontation with Sarah was a whirlwind of emotions, a storm that left both of us reeling. I had expected her to deny the affair, but the intensity of her reaction caught me off guard. She became defensive, her voice rising as she insisted that I was imagining things. "David, how could you think I would do something like that? We're in therapy to fix our marriage." Her words hung in the air, heavy with denial and a hint of anger. I could see the hurt in her eyes, but beneath that hurt was a flicker of something else, fear perhaps, or guilt. It was maddening. I felt like I was grasping at shadows, trying to pin down a truth that was slipping through my fingers. "Sarah, I'm not being paranoid," I said, my voice trembling. "I've listened to the recordings. I know what's going on between you and Dr. Lang. It's not just therapy anymore, it's something else." Her face paled, and for a fleeting moment I thought I saw a flicker of acknowledgement, but just as quickly she masked it with anger. "You're being ridiculous. You're twisting everything we've talked about. You're supposed to trust me." Trust. That word echoed in my mind like a taunt. Trust had been the foundation of our relationship, and now it felt like quicksand beneath my feet. I could feel the walls closing in as I fought against the rising tide of betrayal and anguish. "Trust. Trust is a two-way street, Sarah." I shot back, my voice rising. "You're the one who's been hiding things from me. You've kept secrets and you're lying to my face." We argued back and forth, voices raised, emotions raw, but it felt like we were speaking different languages. I wanted her to understand the depth of my pain, the betrayal I felt not just from her, but from the man we had trusted to help us navigate our issues. But she was entrenched in her denial, deflecting my accusations and turning them back on me. "I don't know what you want me to say," she finally said, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I'm here, aren't I? I'm trying to make this work." In that moment, I felt a pang of guilt for pushing her, for forcing her to defend herself against accusations she vehemently denied. But guilt was quickly overshadowed by the anger that boiled within me. I needed her to face the truth, to acknowledge what was happening, but she remained steadfastly in denial. "Sarah, you're being manipulated," I said, my voice softer now, trying to reach her. "Dr. Lang is crossing boundaries. I've heard it in the recordings. He's encouraging you to open up in ways that feel inappropriate. This isn't just therapy, it's emotional manipulation." For a moment, she looked taken aback. I could see the wheels turning in her mind, the flicker of doubt creeping into her expression. But instead of engaging with my concerns, she pushed back harder, her voice filled with defiance. "You're just jealous of the connection I have with him. You're projecting your insecurities onto me." Her words struck like a knife, and I felt the air leave my lungs. I was not jealous. I was hurt, betrayed, and terrified of losing her. I wanted to scream, to shake her until she understood the gravity of what was unfolding. But deep down, I knew I couldn't force her to see the truth. As the argument escalated, it became clear that we were at an impasse. No matter how much evidence I had, how many recordings I listened to, I couldn't convince her to acknowledge the reality of our situation. It was as if we were trapped in a loop, each of us clinging to our own version of the truth while the other spiraled further into disbelief. The night ended in silence, the tension hanging thick in the air. I felt utterly defeated, a sense of hopelessness washing over me. I wanted to believe that we could work through this, that we could find a way back to each other, but the chasm between us felt insurmountable. In the days that followed, I found myself oscillating between despair and determination. I immersed myself in the recordings, replaying them over and over, searching for clues, for evidence that would resonate with Sarah. I needed her to understand the truth, to see the manipulation for what it was. Each session revealed more layers of betrayal, and I felt my heart sink further with every revelation. I could hear the way Dr. Lang encouraged Sarah to express herself, the way he leaned in, listened intently, and offered her validation. It felt like a betrayal not only of our marriage, but of the trust we had placed in him as our therapist. I tried to gather my thoughts, to formulate a plan for how to confront Dr. Lang. I knew I had to bring this to light, to expose the truth, but I also felt a deep sense of dread. What if I was wrong? What if I was misinterpreting the sessions? The doubt crept in, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was onto something. I decided to reach out to others who had seen Dr. Lang, hoping to gather information that might shed light on his practices. I needed to know if anyone else had experienced similar feelings of discomfort, if anyone else had sensed the boundary blurring between therapist and client. But in the back of my mind, I knew that the real battle lay within my own home. I had to find a way to break through to Sarah, to make her see the truth before it was too late. Time was slipping away, and I felt the weight of our marriage hanging in the balance. The confrontation with Sarah had opened a wound, and I couldn't let it fester. I had to act to expose the truth and to reclaim the trust that had been shattered. But as I sat in the silence of our home, I couldn't help but wonder if it was already too late. As I sat in the dim light of our living room, the weight of what I had discovered pressed heavily on my chest. The recordings, my lifeline and my curse, had revealed a web of deceit I could hardly comprehend. I needed to confront Dr. Lang, the man who had betrayed our trust so profoundly. I had once seen him as a guide, a beacon of hope in our tumultuous marriage, but now he felt like a shadow lurking in the corners of our lives, tainting everything with his manipulations. I spent the next few days reviewing the recordings with a meticulousness that bordered on obsession. I wanted to gather enough evidence to present to Sarah to make her understand the gravity of the situation. Listening to Dr. Lang's voice, I felt a mix of rage and disbelief. His calm demeanor had masked a predatory nature, one that had exploited my wife's vulnerabilities for his own gain. I recalled the first session vividly, the way he had encouraged Sarah to express her feelings while subtly steering the conversation. I remembered the way she had opened up about her insecurities, her fears about our marriage, and how he seemed to validate her every concern. At the time, I had believed he was helping us, guiding us toward understanding. But now I could see how he had taken advantage of our struggles, creating a false sense of intimacy that blurred professional boundaries. The more I listened, the more I recognized the patterns in his interactions with Sarah. He would lean in closer when she spoke, his eyes locked on her as if she were the only person in the room. I could hear the way he praised her, the way he offered her a safe space to share her thoughts, but there was an undercurrent of something more insidious. It felt like he was grooming her, planting seeds of doubt about our marriage while positioning himself as her confidant. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was watching a slow-motion train wreck. The therapy sessions had become a breeding ground for Sarah's discontent, a place where she could voice her frustrations without fear of judgment. But instead of helping us heal, Dr. Lang had created a chasm between us, feeding her insecurities and deepening the divide. The moment I decided to confront him was a culmination of anger and desperation. I called his office and scheduled an appointment, my heart racing as I prepared for what felt like a confrontation with a predator. I rehearsed what I would say, the questions I would ask, and the evidence I would present. I wanted him to squirm, to feel the weight of his actions pressing down on him. When the day finally arrived, I walked into his office with a mix of trepidation and determination. The familiar scent of lavender and sandalwood filled the air, a stark contrast to the turmoil churning inside me. Dr. Lang greeted me with a warm smile, his demeanor as calm and composed as ever. I felt a surge of anger at how effortlessly he wore the mask of a caring therapist, oblivious to the havoc he had wreaked on my life. "David, it's good to see you," he said, gesturing for me to sit. "How can I help you today?" I took a deep breath, steadying myself as I plunged into the confrontation. "I need to talk about my wife, Sarah, and the sessions we've been having together." His expression shifted, the smile faltering for just a moment. "Of course, what's on your mind?" I leaned forward, locking eyes with him. "I've been listening to the recordings of our therapy sessions, and I have serious concerns about the way you've been conducting them." He raised an eyebrow, feigning surprise. "I'm not sure I understand. What concerns do you have?" "Your interactions with Sarah," I said, my voice steady. "It feels like you're crossing boundaries, encouraging her to open up in ways that go beyond professional therapy. It feels inappropriate." Dr. Lang's demeanor shifted slightly, a flicker of annoyance crossing his features. "David, I assure you that my goal is to facilitate open communication between you and Sarah. Therapy requires a certain level of vulnerability, and it's essential for healing." "But at what cost?" I shot back, my anger boiling over. "You're not just facilitating, you're manipulating. You're feeding her insecurities and creating a rift between us. I can hear it in every session. You're using her vulnerabilities to your advantage." He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms defensively. "That's quite an accusation, David. Therapy is complex, and sometimes feelings can evolve in unexpected ways." "Evolve?" I echoed, incredulous. "This isn't about feelings evolving, this is about you exploiting your position. You're supposed to help us, not drive us apart." As I spoke, I could see the calm facade cracking. Dr. Lang's eyes narrowed slightly, and I knew I had struck a nerve. You're being emotional, and that's understandable given the situation. But you need to recognize that therapy is a process. Sometimes it can lead to unexpected revelations. Revelations. I spat, my voice rising. You're not just revealing truths, you're creating them. You're fostering a connection that has no place in therapy. This is about you and Sarah, not about healing our marriage. For the first time, I saw a flicker of anger in his eyes, a flash of irritation that told me I was getting under his skin. David, I think you need to take a step back and consider the bigger picture. Therapy is about growth, and sometimes that means confronting uncomfortable truths. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Uncomfortable truths. You're the one creating discomfort, not helping us navigate it. You've taken advantage of our struggles, and I won't stand for it any longer. The tension in the room was palpable, and for a moment we stared each other down. I felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through me, a sense of empowerment that came from standing up for myself and my marriage. I wasn't going to let him manipulate the narrative any longer. I'll be reporting this, I said firmly, my voice steady. You may think you're untouchable, but I refuse to let you continue this charade. You've betrayed our trust, and I won't allow it to go unnoticed. With that, I stood up, my heart racing as I walked out of his office. I felt a mix of triumph and dread. I had confronted the man who had exploited my wife and our relationship, but I knew the battle was far from over. The real challenge lay ahead, convincing Sarah of the truth and reclaiming the trust that had been shattered. As I walked to my car, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, but the uncertainty of what lay ahead loomed large. I had taken the first step in exposing the truth, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the hardest part was yet to come. In the days following my confrontation with Dr. Lang, I felt a whirlwind of emotions: relief, anger, and an overwhelming sense of dread. I had taken a stand for my marriage, but the battle to reclaim trust with Sarah loomed ahead like a storm cloud. I knew I had to confront her again, to present the evidence I had gathered and help her see the truth. But the thought of facing her after our last argument filled me with anxiety. I spent hours listening to the recordings, dissecting every word spoken between Sarah and Dr. Lang. Each session felt like a punch to the gut, a painful reminder of the intimacy that had been betrayed. I heard the way she laughed at his jokes, the way she opened up to him about her fears and insecurities, things she had never shared with me. It was as if I was listening to a different woman, one who had found solace in the arms of another man, albeit emotionally rather than physically. Sitting in my living room, I felt hollow. The laughter that once filled our home had been replaced by an oppressive silence. I couldn't shake the feeling of inadequacy that gnawed at me. Had I failed her? Had I been so wrapped up in my own struggles that I had neglected her needs? The questions spiraled in my mind, each one more torturous than the last. I tried to reach out to friends, seeking their advice and support, but it felt like I was speaking a different language. They couldn't understand the depth of my pain, the betrayal that had seeped into every corner of my life. I felt isolated, trapped in a nightmare of my own making. The weight of my emotions threatened to crush me, and I began to doubt my own sanity. I found myself engaging in inner monologues, wrestling with my thoughts in an attempt to understand what had happened. Why had Sarah turned to Dr. Lang? Was it my fault? Had I taken her for granted? I replayed moments in our marriage, searching for the signs that had led us to this point. But every time I tried to pinpoint the cause, I was met with a wall of confusion and pain. One night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I felt a surge of determination. I couldn't let this destroy me, and I couldn't let it destroy my marriage. I needed to find a way to reach Sarah, to break through the walls she had built around herself. She had to see that she was being manipulated, that Dr. Lang was not the ally she thought he was. The next day, I gathered my courage and approached her. "Sarah, can we talk?" I asked, my voice steady but tinged with vulnerability. She looked up from her phone, her expression guarded. "About what?" "I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened," I said, taking a deep breath. "I want to show you something that might help you understand what's been going on." Her eyes narrowed, suspicion written across her face. "What do you mean? More accusations?" "No," I said, shaking my head. "I just want you to listen. I need you to hear what I've heard." I led her to the living room and pulled up the recordings on my laptop. As I played the first session, I watched her expression shift from curiosity to confusion, and then to discomfort. I could see her internal struggle as she listened to her own voice. The vulnerability she had shared with Dr. Lang laid bare before us. "David, I don't know if this is fair," she said, her voice trembling. "These are just snippets of conversation. You're taking them out of context." "Am I?" I pressed, my heart racing. "Listen to how he encourages you to share your feelings, how he validates your concerns about our marriage. It's not just therapy, it's manipulation." As the recordings continued, I could see her defenses starting to crack. The denial she had clung to began to waver, replaced by a dawning realization. I could see the conflict in her eyes as she processed the truth I had been trying to convey. "David, I didn't realize," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought he was helping me." "Helping you?" I echoed, my voice rising. "He's been exploiting your vulnerabilities, creating a rift between us. You've opened up to him in ways you've never done with me, and it's not right." Tears began to stream down her cheeks, and I felt my heart ache at the sight of her pain. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," she said, her voice cracking. "I thought he was just helping me work through my feelings. Sarah, you have to understand that this isn't just about you and Dr. Lang. It's about us, our marriage, and the trust that has been shattered. We need to confront this together." As the last recording ended, the silence that followed felt deafening. I could see the wheels turning in her mind, the dawning realization of the betrayal that had taken place. For the first time, I felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps we could begin to heal, to rebuild the trust that had been so carelessly dismantled. "I didn't want to believe it," she finally admitted, her voice trembling. "I thought I was just being vulnerable, that I was working through my issues. I didn't realize how far it had gone." "Neither did I said softly, reaching for her hand. "But we can't move forward until we confront this together. We need to take back our narrative, to reclaim our marriage from the grips of manipulation." In that moment, I felt a flicker of connection between us, a tentative bridge forming across the chasm of betrayal. It wouldn't be easy, and the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but for the first time in a long while, I felt like we were on the same page. We had a long way to go, but at least we were finally facing the truth together. The journey to healing was just beginning, but I believed we could find our way back to each other. We had faced the darkness, and now it was time to step into the light. In the days that followed our confrontation, I felt a mix of cautious optimism and lingering anxiety. Sarah and I had finally acknowledged the truth of our situation, but the journey ahead was daunting. We needed to navigate the fallout from Dr. Lang's manipulation and rebuild the trust that had been so brutally shattered. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to fight for our marriage. We decided to take a step back from therapy altogether. The thought of returning to Dr. Lang felt like inviting a wolf back into the fold. Instead, we sought out a different therapist, someone with a fresh perspective who could help us navigate the complexities of our situation. I felt a sense of relief as we made this decision, knowing we were taking control of our narrative. As we began our sessions with the new therapist, I noticed a shift in our dynamic. Sarah was more open, more willing to share her feelings and insecurities. The new therapist encouraged us to communicate honestly, creating a safe space for both of us to express our fears without judgment. It felt like a breath of fresh air, a stark contrast to the emotional manipulation we had endured before. But even as we made progress, the scars of betrayal lingered. I often found myself grappling with feelings of inadequacy, questioning whether I was enough for Sarah. The recordings of those therapy sessions haunted me, a reminder of the emotional intimacy she had shared with another man. I had to remind myself that healing was a process, one that required patience and understanding. During our sessions, we explored the roots of our issues, the communication breakdowns, the unfulfilled expectations, and the emotional distance that had developed over time. We learned to express our needs more clearly, to be vulnerable with each other in ways that felt safe and supportive. Slowly but surely, I began to feel the walls we had built around ourselves start to crumble. One evening, after a particularly intense session, Sarah and I sat on the couch, both exhausted but hopeful. I turned to her, searching her eyes for any sign of doubt. "Do you think we can get through this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She reached for my hand, her grip firm. "I believe we can. It won't be easy, but I want to fight for us. I want to rebuild our trust and reconnect in a way that feels real." Her words filled me with a sense of purpose. I realized that while the betrayal had rocked the foundation of our marriage, it had also opened the door to deeper conversations. We were learning to confront our vulnerabilities together, to share our fears and hopes in a way that felt genuine. As time passed, I found myself reflecting on the nature of trust and betrayal. It was a fragile thing, easily broken but not impossible to mend. I had once believed that love was enough to sustain a marriage, but I now understood that trust was the bedrock upon which love could flourish. We were learning to rebuild that trust, brick by brick, as we navigated the complexities of our relationship. Eventually, I made the decision to confront Dr. Lang formally. I filed a complaint with the state board, detailing the unethical practices I had witnessed. It felt empowering to take action, to hold him accountable for his actions. I wanted to ensure that no other couple would fall victim to his manipulation. It was a small step, but it felt like reclaiming a piece of my dignity. The process of confronting Dr. Lang was cathartic, but it also stirred up emotions I thought I had begun to put behind me. I had to remind myself that I was doing this not only for Sarah but for our future together. I wanted to protect what we had built, to safeguard the trust we were slowly restoring. As the months rolled on, I felt a renewed sense of hope. Our relationship was evolving, and while there were still moments of doubt and insecurity, they were accompanied by a deeper understanding of each other. We were learning to communicate, to listen, and to support one another in ways we had never done before. One evening, as we sat together on the couch, I turned to Sarah and said, "I'm grateful for this journey, even with all the pain it's brought us. It's forced us to confront things we needed to address, and I believe we're stronger for it." She smiled, her eyes shining with warmth. "I feel the same way. I never want to go through that again, but I'm glad we're in this together. I love you, David." "I love you too," I replied, feeling a surge of emotion. In that moment, I knew we were on the right path. The road ahead would still have its challenges, but we were committed to facing them together. As I sat there, hand in hand with my wife, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. We had weathered the storm of betrayal, and while it had changed us, it had also forged a connection that felt deeper and more authentic than before. We were learning to trust again, to love again, and to cherish the bond we had fought so hard to protect. In the end, I realized that trust and betrayal are two sides of the same coin. One can't exist without the other. But through our struggles, we had learned that love, when nurtured with honesty and vulnerability, could overcome even the darkest of betrayals. As we looked toward the future, I felt a renewed sense of hope, knowing that together, we could face whatever challenges lay ahead. And so, our journey continued, not without its scars, but with a newfound appreciation for the strength of our love and the resilience of our hearts. Thank you for being part of this journey.